y'all? How's it going? Just hopping on here real quick. What's up? Kimmy, your first Z Proxy and Jedi Princess, what's up? Thanks for hopping on with me so late. Got an awesome conjunction of Saturn, the Moon, and Jupiter coming up for me. So I'm gonna run for, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes. We'll take a look at all three. Just an amazing shot tonight. I know I was gonna try and go live over the weekend, but I was clouded out. Anyway, hope you had a nice start to your week and had a good moon day. 2:20 a.m. on the East Coast. Another live show. Settle in, it's gonna be music heavy while I mess with the scope, and I'll check in on the chat. Playing some stuff from Vibration Theater, I think it's the right time. Alright, hopping in here for a second. Saying what's up to Renegade, how you doing? And Despindando, and welcome Philip Blair. How you doing? Welcome to the channel. So that was a quick tour in the beginning. Jupiter is like, right now it's looking a little bit better than Saturn. It's rising right above the moon. Right now the moon's at, 17 degrees. Jupiter's at 18 and Saturn's at 15. So Saturn was having the most turbulence, but really cool to get a shot of all three of them right next to each other. And yeah, here at the moon, focused in on Sea of Serenity. At the top, Posidonius. On the left, Mare Imbrium, Cassini, Autolycus, and Archimedes. Plato at the left, Sinus Iridum at the bottom left corner. Anaxagoras at the 1030 position, and then Tranquility is the bottom right corner. So let's hang out here for a little bit, and you can see the turbulence goes in and out, but when it's clear, it's looking real nice. Real powerful tonight, yeah, Renegade. All right, let's do some, what about this jam? to fly. Race satisfied. See you in the sequels that made my previous. Don't know what this equals. Let me play your side. Anything so sweet for your heart tonight. See the sequel. Hey, what's going on? Nice to see you, Tess. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you're doing well. I've seen some of your recent videos, they look amazing. But I don't know if you heard, I'm just staying away a little bit from the YouTube circuit. But I felt like I had to stream a few times. Been having some really nice skies here. So yeah, just checking out some Jupiter. I want to say what up Flat Earth Dude, and what up Haunted House, and Astrolabium, and anybody else hopping in. What's going on? Hope you're well. And what's going on, Tom? Tess is asking, yep, and good evening to you all. Doing well, thanks. Awesome. Have I seen a hexagonal or plasma tail on Venus? So I have not had a chance to set up on the other side. I only have this 11-inch setup for now, so looking easterly, I can't get a shot of Venus, so I've just been looking at it kind of sitting on the steps and watching it. Looks amazing and super bright, and with the binoculars it's hard to tell any shapes actually, but it's definitely been kind of like it looks stretched a little bit like we're seeing now with Saturn and Jupiter, but it's also due to the fact that it was setting when I saw it. So it's been kind of resting every night along with where I think Atlas is supposed to be, kind of northwest for me, and I don't really have a setup over there. I mentioned a couple of times, but like I'd love to do it, but I don't even know how I would. But I do agree that I think you were mentioning that, you know, this whole thing could be due to active comets or active solar activity, and right now I'm a little tired to get into it, but I definitely think that that is very logical, and it's just funny how it's never talked about in the public, but I think that's how it goes with everything really special. It's not too popular. What's up, Clara Santos? Welcome. And let's see. Yeah. Also, it wouldn't shock me, Tess, if the tail was hexagonal because of the nature of the Birkeland filament and the emanations and basically the lattice structure. So it seems to me like it would be hexagonal at some angle, right? But I think when you look at it at a different angle, it can kind of blend and turn into like a smoother edge. But really, when you break it down, I think it's all hexagonal interlocking. On the 22nd of May, I don't know. So I'll maybe like have to get a smaller scope out of storage and figure out like how to set it up and get some shots of Venus and Atlas, because I know it's like the hot celestial thing to do. Yeah, no, it's an extended winter up north. Here it's pretty cooking right now. It's pretty, yeah. It's like 75 the other night. I was like, wow, it's cool. Right now it feels like 80 with humidity. Anyway, back to the tunes, chilling out with y'all on another space stream. It's cool that I can't even move this 11-inch, so it's always set up. And as Saturn and Jupiter rise earlier and earlier, we're gonna get some great views. Yeah, I know all of you probably have already checked it out, but if you haven't, check out Tess's channel. I really enjoyed that chat we had a few months back over the sun. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more time and energy to put into it this summer, and we can do another solar stream. That would be fun. I really want to ramp up my activity in, like towards the fall and then winter, when we're going to have the conjunction in the east. It's going to be amazing to see Saturn and Jupiter in the same frame, pretty much. Lots of love to you, Tess. I'm glad you're doing well. It's warm in Sweden, huh? What up, Fantasy Ecstasy? Yep, late night stream here. So, looking at Jupiter with this is camera direct to scope. And if I could find my lighter, it would be awesome. I'll be right back, y'all. And then I'm gonna switch it up. We're gonna check out some Saturn and then go back to the moon. And I'll get myself a drink as well.
Now you're left for dead.
it's now you're left for dead. Just pay your debts. Float, the meal's calling. A souvenir, a soul's rescue. I hope you live. They're fixing the furrow, fixing your lip. It's now you're left for dead. Just pay your debts. Float, a formidable opponent. An angry crackpot. Formidable opponent. Dangerous lecture. Formidable opponent. You can walk out. Formidable opponent. Think you have the choice. Formidable opponent. Angry crackpot. Formidable opponent. Dangerous lecture. Formidable opponent. You can walk out. Formidable opponent. Think you have the choice. Alright, what's up everybody? Alright, so I added the focal reducer back on the scope so you get a bit of a wider shot. It's really looking nice. All right, just hopping back in the chat for a second. Let's see. So Astrolabium asked me, Saturn will slowly get close from now until July, right? All at night, I mean. Yep, so earlier and earlier, so tonight, what is it, 3 a.m. and Saturn and Jupiter are at like 20 degrees altitude. And they're just going to keep rising earlier and earlier until the point where, earlier and earlier until they're really in the east in December, which is amazing. And yes, Saturn will definitely get a little closer and the views will be better. This is the 11-inch, I mean, Saturn typically we can get like a much better shot. So right now it's kind of not only rising, but it's being affected by Jupiter and the moon and also atmospheric turbulence. So we'll see over the next couple of weeks even, I think I'll get a better shot. Ooh, lots of chats. Abracadabra's a great song, definitely. I'm just reading through all this stuff. Perfect social experiment, the corona. Yeah. Well, I think every experience, basically, the giant algorithm is learning from human behavior, and we in turn are learning from the giant algorithm. It's an interesting time. I was thinking today that it's just amazing that I get to live through something like this. But at the same time, systems tend to act the same way. There's a lot of theft going on and a lot of judgment. And then there's an incredible amount of abundance and art and happiness. I think it definitely goes hand in hand. It's the system that is intrinsically tied to itself, in a way, the bad and the good. So I'm just taking it in stride. I think sooner or later things will return. Ooh, what's up, Copper Tropicals? How you doing? Long time. Is that a cat in a bag? It's a cat in a box. If it fits, I sits. All right, getting some Harry Potter moments. It's pretty fun. Getting nice views right now. Top right corner, Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility. To the left, Mare Imbrium, and just another great example of how two hexagons side by side creating not only the flower of life, but the torus right in the center at the top. You can see it. Looks like the bridge of the nose, looks like the mouth of a leopard, looks like honeycomb cellular structure. This is the true intrinsic geometry lattice that even Pierre-Marie Robitaille is talking about. Sky scholars like talking about how liquid metallic hydrogen creates a lattice, like a real geometry around the sun, and he's spot on with that. Let's play a little song here. I'm getting a little sleepy. I think I'm gonna wrap it up in like 10, 15 minutes or so. I still want to get another shot of Saturn, but such a cool night. Glad to be able to share it with y'all. Tess says, love Robitaille. Yeah, like his new series of videos is so spot on, and he's really articulating how to talk about the sun, and how genes, and I think was it Edwin Hubble and James Jeans had the whole discussion about liquid stars and the cosmic microwave background radiation, how those results are misinterpreted, the M87 black hole, and how that data is fluffed up. Like, he's really, really sharp about that stuff. So I have links in the description to Dr. Robitaille, as well as some others, all the Electric Universe channels. But I've mentioned it on the recent few shows that I've done that I'm kind of checked out of that world for a second, just because I'm convinced. I kind of don't need any more convincing that the universe is electric. I'm trying to just live it. You got to live it in order to appreciate the kind of interconnectedness. Watching birds, watching trees, eating food, you know, creating art, doing stuff you can see, and then listening to these noises. Everything has this hexagonal shape, and you can kind of, it's almost like having X-ray glasses, seeing the universe through this intrinsic geometry, and knowing that one cannot, you know, the self cannot know the self, just like fire can't burn itself. So we exist in relation to the world, and the world only exists in relation to us, and it can't be any other way, at least for me. But yeah, I mean, when they talk about liquid stars, I think really ultimately if you take the entire universe as plasma, and then you have these pinches within plasma at different resonances creating this geometry, like bubbles interconnected, then creating hexagonal lattices, and then as time progresses, as we feel it progress, these bubbles create layers and layers and layers of dense plasma that actually retains memory and what we perceive probably as time, because we resonate against these shells from a central core, just like every quantum particle in the universe. I think it's very interesting that, for me, it's completely obvious that information exists outside the human body at this point, and I live it. And it's really interesting to see almost just all these science shows and medicine, the whole coronavirus stuff, and people not talking about how information is actually outside the human body, stored in shells forever. And the same thing goes for every particle, every animal, every inanimate object has its own so-called aura that retains its conscious information because it has to exist by virtue of it existing, it has these shells. And so if you imagine Earth has the retention and memory of everything it's ever been through, but it's also moving away from Earth in these shells at a quantized rate if you follow a Halton Arp's work with redshift. Yeah, just moving so we can see some of Tycho on the south. In the south. Right under the Terminator line, you got Theophilus and Katharina, that kind of chain of craters. And that in and of itself is a recursive side-by-side hexagon structure that emanates the torus and the shells. And at the center of that, that's why you have those bullseye craters, but that's also why you have the walls between the craters. Thanks, Jedi Princess, I appreciate that. I know sometimes I think about it, I'm like, you're not really supposed to tell, to blurt out Zen teachings, but ultimately all the Zen masters can't help themselves, or just Zen practicers. Dare I call myself a master? Alan Watts was talking, what was he saying? He said something of like, he was talking to Rinzai in Japan about some sort of book, and I was like, "No, that book is terrible. It tells you everything." It's like you're not supposed to reveal the secrets, but in this crazy time, not just Corona, but like in general. I mean, for years now, just doing this moon stream, and then before that, thinking about aliens, and before that, thinking about changing the world and doing things, there's an opportunity to do everything, ultimately. But to me, it's fascinating because there's a level of New Age information and sacred teachings, and they talk about, Eileen McCusick talks about the human biofield, and Gerald Pollack talks about the fourth state of matter, easy water, and how these shells and shapes interact ionically. And then Pierre-Marie Robitaille talks about the sun, our main star, which should be a representation for other stars having an actual physical geometric lattice, just a crystalline geometric shape. And then you take the surface features of the moon, and then you look at your hand, and you realize, we're all imprinted with these dendritic electrical scarification marks. So we're recursively the same, landscape through and through, from the moon to your hand, to animals, to trees. The separation of self is truly the illusion, as the Zen teachers say it, but it seems like the illusion is necessary in order to progress, because if there were no grand illusion, there would be no story. What you try and get to behind that maybe is what everyone's looking for. But for me, I think once I figured out that the geometry is provable, is repeatable, and you can see it on the moon, you can see it on your hand, you can see it in animals. That puts it in a perspective of, it's like Neo seeing through the Matrix and all the numbers are streaming by and seeing the agents. I think the Brahman, this intrinsic geometry, this lattice structure, is like the glasses. When you put them on, you can see everything in the universe and how it connects and why things operate the way they do. And then you realize that you're an important part of it. Your purpose becomes to exist. You don't have a purpose in this life, but it seems like the purpose is to exist. By virtue of existing, there must be a purpose. It doesn't need to even have a reason in a way. And it also, the other thing is that purpose only exists in relation to non-purpose. So it both has purpose and no purpose at all. So I was watching some people, talk about this type of, these types of teachings. I think like the J. Krishnamurti stuff and Eckhart Tolle and Abraham Hicks. But I tend to every time I hear people talk in that vein, I tend to always get back to Alan Watts and Halton Arp and Velikovsky and many others, of course. But really, those guys really articulated what they were trying to say, which was the distance in space needs to be thought about. The age of space and Earth needs to be thought about. And Alan Watts talks about how destruction is perfectly safe and perfectly normal because of these structures, because of these wave fronts, the rarefaction and compression. This is why we exist, this is how we die, and then we get reborn, so to speak, over the course of the existence of all the universe, because we are truly that one source. But then what they don't really talk about is what I was saying in terms of, okay, information actually exists outside the human body, stored forever, perpetually, until, I guess, you die. But even then, the conservation of energy means that potentially the information that stored your human existence reintegrates with the ether plasma and retains memory to some degree. It might not be memory that you can tap into the way we do. So think about like how quickly you can tap into a memory of eating at a restaurant. Or if I tell you, like, when was the last time you drove a car, like a long distance, you can immediately recall the sense of being in the car, the images that were going by, the smell, so on and so forth. Where do you think that is actually stored? Right now we live in a society where people think that that's actually inside the brain, and they're scanning the brain and trying to figure out like where those memories are. But it really makes much more sense that those memories are actually imprinted outside the human body in like what would be like a tape. But it's probably dense plasma. And so that in and of itself, just that idea, that concept breaks my whole reality. It makes everything kind of just make, one, a lot more sense to me, but two, make everything else seem make no sense to me. When you hear, pharmaceutical companies and doctors talk about inside the body, inside the head, insisting that there's separation, it doesn't make any sense to me anymore. Exactly, Haunted House got it. Ram Dass used to say, death is very safe. Death is the safest thing you can do. I love that. I think it makes a lot of sense. You're covering your bases, Tess says, I don't want to remember, I just want to become a nebula or something that doesn't have to think or do anymore. A lazy star. I don't know, I think, I constantly ponder whether nebula would even exist without the perception, without us perceiving nebula. Like, I think the fact that it's tied together metaphysically, but also physically, right? So if you think about the shells outside the human body and the brain being the receptor of these memories from the shells, and each shell representing a period of time or a phase, and there are gradients, right? So I guess if you die, maybe these bubbles come crashing towards the center. This is what they talk about when it says your whole life flashes before your eyes. Maybe these actual physical dense plasma bubbles return and just collapse to a center point. And what happens to that energy? That's really fascinating. I don't know what happens at that point, but I think that energy, or whatever, is it etheric plasma? Is it crystalline lattice structure, structured information in dense plasma? Is it a concept? Is it a code framework? Is it a set of rules? Is it a fractal? I don't know, but I think once you get to the point where you're there, it's also incredible that you even exist, that it makes it worth living or worth existing. Maybe not even worth living, just worth existing. Just because if you can perceive a nebula, right? Isn't that impressive? I mean, what we're doing right now is so impressive. I'm like half asleep, and y'all are on this like crazy screen, and we're pulling in images from deep space, or like close space, relatively close space. But I don't know. It's pretty insane at the very baseline of it all is already crazy. Or maybe it's just the Rona talking. The Renegade says the Buddhists say that some move on, others are torn in two, sent to the poles and reincarnated. So that's actually pretty fascinating. Actually, that brings up a great point, which is it different for everybody, right? Is like when bubbles pop in a sink or anything like that, they don't all pop exactly the same way, even though at the very, I don't know, there's both chaos and order, right? So bubbles will pop towards a center attractor to some degree, right? But it'll have a variance in the way it gets attracted to the center point. So let's say also if you're a certain age, or you've had a lot of experiences, or your so-called aura is strong, or you have just denser plasma memories than others, maybe the collapsed shells when you die like change and affect each other differently, and cascade differently. So maybe this is what all these different types of experiences post-death or near-death factor in terms of, because for me the geometry is so specific. The fact that there's a hexagonal North Pole on a planet, the fact that we're looking at hexagons and burbs flying across the moon, and the bird looks like a hexagon too if you get a close-up. The wings are dipolar, Birkeland current, and we're grown along these same filaments, and then these structures are in our hands and in planets and molecules. It's, yeah. I mean, these things are all so perfectly connected that, and our perception of it, whether we think even our perception is an entire illusion. So that's the other thing about metaphysics and certain philosopher types, especially the Eckhart Tolle and I'm not trying to rip on these guys, but I really, I'll tell you specifically where I got it from. So quarantine, right, all these different musicians are now like getting online and doing teachings and talking and right, and not even playing music, they're just chilling. So Steve Vai, who's an amazing guitar player, one of the greatest, and he's a brilliant guy too. So Steve Vai basically got on and started giving his Zen teachings to people, and he's really, really great. But at the same time, he was like, at the point that he said, hey, the way I can prove it to you is by virtue of existing. And I'm like, okay, great, you got it. But I think if you don't tie in this physical geometry, then it still feels a little nebulous. It still feels a little out of reach for most people, I think. Because people just have to, because if you say, trust me, you're me. Trust me, you're the rest of the universe. You know, trust me, all is love. People are going to be skeptical because that's the nature of humanity and reality is to be skeptical and to prove that skepticism right or wrong in the search for moving forward. So I feel like it's more important to, because when you show somebody something, or even an animal, or I should not even phrase it that way, an animal or anything that you can train, if you show them the connection, then it makes a lot of sense. And for me, there's absolutely no doubt that there's a hexagon right in front of me on the moon, and it somehow looks like a leopard's mouth, and it looks like the bridge of a human nose on a skull. And science attributes that to, oh, you know, it's just, you're just seeing things, you know. It's the same type of rhetoric that you hear in these stupid science, what's it called? These articles about, it's pop sci, you know, pop sci articles. They just use this kind of rhetoric, this jargon to fill up the articles while not actually saying anything. It's the same thing they do with politics. But they is you. So in a way, you know, you're both setting yourself up to fail, and then giving yourself the opportunity to fail or succeed. So we can't remove ourselves from the actual, well, I can't remove myself from the fact that I've been doing everything since the beginning. And the way I can prove that to you is that you have a body that was grown, right? I had this discussion a few months back, now a lot of months back, but I think Rick and I were talking about this shockwave, that like, who grew your lungs and your eyeballs? Your parents didn't like make them by hand, right? Who grew your lungs and your legs and your limbs? You know, what is you know, primal nature, instinct, survival, that is just scoffed at and talked about like, oh, it's just you know, survival instinct. Yeah, what is that? You know, it's just survival. It's just like instinct, you know, survival. It's just like genes. And I'm like, yeah, what is that? And they're like, no, you know, like it's genetic code. It's like instinct, like survival. And I'm like, okay, but you know, if you just take it one step further and you start realizing, no, it's like intrinsic, structured lattice geometry. It acts and behaves the same way at every scale. You have dimensions, you have scalar mechanics, it all fits. You have quantum, you have gravity at a large scale. Under this one concept, everything really fits. Memory, life, time, death, everything. And it's the one thing that can't be revealed. It's so damn funny. Public science is so far away from revealing that information is actually outside the human body. I mean, it's just like hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, but you can get it right now live on YouTube on this channel that nobody follows. All right, that's my rant for tonight, 3:33 a.m. I'm gonna play a couple more songs here. We'll check out Saturn and Jupiter one more round. Oh, this is good timing. Don't know what you're killing for. Staring at Alright everybody, so I'm going to start wrapping it here, just going to wrap it here. Let's see, one song to take us out on this really beautiful, like kind of at an angle shot. You can see typically it's, we see Saturn at about 30 degrees further to the right clockwise. So right now it's almost on its side. So you got Dione, Rhea, Tethys, Eyepieces, and I'm forgetting one of the moons, but is it Cassini? No, that's the spacecraft. Dione, Rhea, Tethys, and Eyepieces, and probably one more. And Titan, right? Maybe. It's late. Cool. Thanks everybody. Thanks Fantasy. Thanks Kimmy. Thanks Renegade. Thank you Tess. Great to see you. I'm glad you're doing well and making videos. Really good. Really, really good. Haunted House. Thanks. I knew Copper Tops was here for a second. Great to see you too. Astrolabium. Jedi Princess. Hope you have a great night in the city. FE Dude, have a great night. And I know Z Proxy was here for a second. All right. Send lots of love out to everybody, old and new TakeBackSpace fans. I know some don't join the channel anymore, but it's not for the lack of me being here. No, I'm just kidding. It's, I appreciate all of you, sincerely, and you all built the channel with me. And yeah. It's always an open door if you want to come back and hang out with us. So, yeah. Have a great day tomorrow, everybody. 3:39. I'm signing off. I'll see you soon on another space stream. Sleep well. Peace.